Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again for another coffee chat as part of the Victorian Government Trade and Investment Southeast Asia's engagement. I am delighted today to be coming to you with coffee in hand to speak to two good friends and partners in Southeast Asia, Dr. Kirrilee Hughes and Eloise Dolan. Thank you so much for joining me. And maybe a quick, before we jump in, where are you joining us from and what's in your cup?
So I am joining you from the Asia Society and RMIT Trade and Innovation Hub, just on Swanston Street, which is a collaboration with the Victorian Government. And I'm drinking a St. Ali coffee in celebration of this coffee chat because I know that they export to Southeast Asia. So I wanted to represent a little bit there.
Fantastic, Eloise. Thank you so much. And Kirrilee?
Hi, I'm dialing in from my home office in Singapore, and I'm Turkish coffeeing today, but the beans come from across the straits from Sumatra.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, thank you. So mine is from the Podco, which is my trusty pods that I travel with no matter where I am around the world, and of course from Melbourne. Today, it's been a long time coming actually, but today we're here to talk about the latest report and collaboration between Asia Society and IEAA, the Generation Asia report's Keeping Connected. So let me go to Eloise first and just ask more broadly where this research fits. We know Asia Society is doing a lot of work, but Generation Asia is a project that's been very close to your heart. So can you tell us why Generation Asia and why now?
Absolutely. Well, Generation Asia is Asia Society Australia's commitment to spotlighting younger voices on and from Asia. It is really about empowering the next generation of Asia-engaged young people, for the future. Really, we're facing a new era of global affairs defined by disruption, geopolitical and trade tensions, and still now relative travel immobility. And all such problems are really affecting young people most adversely. So really at Asia Society, we said, okay, how can we make a commitment to say we need to address that? We need to use our convening power in order to, really ensure that we have future Asia literate leaders, and that's what Generation Asia is all about. And under this banner, it's a whole host of exciting work. We have a young leaders platform. We have partnerships with leading Asia-focused youth organisations. It's a program stream. It's a national annual forum, and now it's research.
Fantastic. So let's go to the research. And I was very lucky to be part of the steering committee working on this. The project is in three parts. So we've seen the first part of the research. Can you talk us through the report themes and why we've taken this approach to the research?
I'll talk a little bit quickly about sort of that background, which really these reports started with a simple question in the height of that very first of March, April lockdown of 2020. How do we stay connected with Asia, and how do we keep our young people connected with Asia? It was about going, okay, these lines of communication seem to be closed. What's happening? What are the innovations that we're seeing? How are people in our community, Victorian government, stakeholders, education providers, really keeping young people kind of connected to the region? Asia Society, we're a convener of ideas, but we really thought we could create something quite unique as enabled by our partnership with the Victorian government, just to actually put to paper, okay, what are the challenges young people are facing in this pandemic era, and how can we capture, data in a public resource while also providing some space to profile some amazing innovations that have been keeping young people connected to Asia, but also young people from the region connected to us. So that is in large part what outlines that report one, Keeping Connected. But we sort of said, it's not enough though just to set the scene and go, hey, the lay of the land, and it's really challenging, but there are some good stuff there. We want to also create a timeline for this work and follow a young person's Asia engagement story at using the most up-to-date data that we can, so employing the latest census data. So our subsequent reports, Asia competency, employment and the future of work, and finally championing our talent, kind of speaks to that. Okay, and so what? So a young person has experienced this connection point, but how are we capitalising on this as they move into the workspace? And also, in what ways are our stakeholders really valuing that idea that came up, that has always been around, but really prevalent in the pandemic, which was valuing the idea as also Asia at home.
Thanks so much, Eloise. Yeah, I mean, the opportunity to have started this research during those COVID times and to continue that, it's going to be a very unique story. And talking about unique, I understand this is the first time that Asia Society and International Education Association of Australia have partnered together officially. So Kirrilee, who's also the research director for IEAA, very keen to hear from you about why the partnership, why now, and what we think the value is for the future of international education as well in this research.
Absolutely, thank you. So as you've said, this is the first time that the Asia Society Australia and the International Education Association of Australia, or IEAA, have come together in a research partnership. I manage the research function at IEAA, and we're really pleased to be stepping a little bit outside of our comfort zone at IEAA, which is usually strictly the international education realm. IEAA is a members-based organisation for international education professionals in Australia. But really the overlapping theme here is young people and youth from Australia and from the Asia Pacific as well. So that's where IEAA's interests, I guess, in this project stem from. So the value of international education in maintaining and growing Australia-Asia youth engagement is so important. As this research shows, it's one of the primary mechanisms that has maintained connectivity over the period of immobility that COVID brought about. But also prior to COVID, when we think about the ways that young Australians and young Asians, young people from across the Asia Pacific connect with each other, it really is international education is so important there in terms of young people from the region coming to Australia for education purposes to study, but also young Australians travelling out into the region on a really diverse range of student mobility programs as well. For example, those supported through the New Colombo Plan now, but in the past through other programs from institutions and from governments as well. So the research showed that international education has been and continues to be a primary mechanism for connectivity. And that's really where IEAA's interest in this project stem from.
Well, let me go to a second question around, I think one of the most interesting parts of the research was the start of measures or the start of an index to inform what Asia engagement looks like. We get so many anecdotes, and those of us who work in the sector, either in Asia engagement or international education, see them every day. But how do we actually turn this into something we can measure? So I just wondered if you could take us through the core measurements of what we mean when we talk about Asia engagement, and also any of any surprising data from the first research report.
Absolutely. So that's been one of the greatest things about working on this project is stepping outside of international education and looking at the other ways that that young people within and from the region connect with each other. So we broke down, and with the help of our steering committee, and Rebecca's a member of that steering committee, we looked at four main drivers for youth connectivity. So we looked at travel and tourism, looked at international education, looked at business and employment, and we looked at civic engagement as well. So the three pillars that we explored quantitatively through the report were travel, international education, and business and employment. We really wanted to have a look at volunteering, and we all know how important volunteering is, but it was difficult to find some reliable, regular data sources on that. So we'd love to include volunteering in a future reiteration of this project. But what we've done in the first half of this particular report is build a framework for measuring engagement. We call these indicators. And when you ask me about the surprises, I mean, of course, we know the importance of international education between Australia and the region. And to me, that this remained important during COVID. We saw lots of wonderful innovations from institutions in and around the region. For example, the Victorian government study hubs that were set up throughout the region, initiatives to really ensure that engagement was maintained. The surprises I found were in some of the data we looked at, and we think it's the first time this has been looked at in terms of breaking down some of our inbound data to Australia, looking at age and source country. So we now know that 18 to 35-year-olds from the Asia Pacific make up around 15%, or they did before COVID, around 15% of inbound tourists to Australia, showing just how important that age group and those markets are. And when we look at it for business and employment, it's actually a little bit higher, closer to 20%. And these are obviously what we're hoping we will recover to and exceed in a post-pandemic context now that travel has become available again.
Yeah, Kirrilee, I think that was a great, certainly in being involved in the project and reading the final output as well, not just data, but the stories of young leaders and leaders who actually, I think, were much more purposeful in their engagement because couldn't travel, couldn't connect. I've got two final questions. I've finished my coffee though already, but two final questions. One for you, Kirrilee, in terms of the next report. So I think report 2 is due out shortly, and any teasers you've got for us or any invitations to get involved.
Absolutely. So our next report will be out next month. We've been waiting for some Australian census data that was released earlier this month. And what we do in that report is we reframe Asia literacy and look at other ways, other than studying in universities, schools and other places of formal education, other ways that young Australians are or have become Asia literate. And we look at languages that are spoken at home, and that's a census question. And I can tell you that there's some really interesting languages and use of languages from the Asia Pacific region by our young people. In fact, when we looked at the last census, so that was 2016, the number of young people using an Asian language at home is greater than the population of the ACT. So it is substantial, and there will be some really interesting information about the different types of languages and the national interests that represents as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, let me go to Eloise for the closing question, which is for our audience today, or whenever they download this on their Global Victoria or VGTI channel. How can they get involved with Generation Asia, the broader project, and this activity as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say 3 things. Get engaged with Asia Society. You know, we work really closely with Victorian government and other stakeholders to really produce some publicly accessible content. I am always looking for younger experts and younger speakers, and that is through our commitment through Generation Asia. So I am always just putting it out there that I'd love to get some more younger people speaking at Asia Society. Have your say in our research. Kik mentioned the volunteerism data that we're trying to kind of access. So please, we'll share a link to the survey for that. And have your say. If you're interested in submitting a case study as well, we're always open to that. And finally, sort of culminating all this exciting research in person on the 11th of August at the National Library of Victoria, but also online. We're hosting the Generation Asia Young Leaders Forum, which really brings so much of this to life. And I hope that you can listen in.
Fantastic. Some very clear calls to action there. And of course, hopefully we can come and visit you in the Trade Innovation Hub there in Swanston Street in not too distant future.
Please, you're all welcome.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eloise and Kik. It's great to see this research being shared, and also to hear the open invitation to continue to contribute. I think, the compelling statistic of 60% of the world's youth are in this region, in Asia Pacific. The opportunity is enormous for our future prosperity, our future engagement. And thank you so much for sharing your insights today and being part of our coffee chat.